Abstract questions. To make people kinder, I'm setting out to answer these two questions. Why are we kind? Why aren't we kinder? At this point, I fear you might be thinking this all sounds a little too abstract. Perhaps you're looking around at the volume of socially condoned cruelty in our society and thinking now's not the time for philosophizing. Aren't these theoretical questions just intellectual curiosities, inappropriate in a time when what we really need are practical actions we can take to resist a rising tide of violence? I want to convince you that the most abstract moral questions and our answers to them matter. Usually, when we disagree on some isolated moral question, when we can't decide what the kind thing to do is or whether a certain act of kindness is required of us, we conduct our argument on a superficial level. Let's say you're arguing with one of your friends because you disagree on what your duties are when someone who is street homeless asks for money to buy a hot drink. One of you might suggest that the money will be put to better use if donated to a homeless shelter, while the other might point out that one of the many dehumanizing aspects of being street homeless is that everyone you meet thinks they're better placed than you to decide what's in your best interest. Maybe there's also a third friend who says that, though it would be generous to use your money in either of these ways, ultimately it's your hard-earned money, and you have no duty whatsoever to do anything about homelessness with it. We're not a fan of this guy. It's unlikely, I think, that you'd move the argument further back and look for a more abstract origin for your disagreement. Perhaps if you did, you'd find that you'd have different takes on what justifies the existence and maintenance of private property rights. Maybe one friend believes those rights are built into the fabric of the universe, and the other thinks they're an essential legal construct for a functioning economy, while you recognize these rights as contingent features of our current economic system that allow the wealthy to exploit others. And perhaps it's here that the divergence in your views really lies. This is a problem that crops up a lot. In fact, it's everywhere I look. People are arguing about the particular, trying to shape one another's views on specific issues without checking if there's any agreement on the premises they brought to these conversations. However you want to cut it, left versus right, social justice warrior versus fascist, snowflake versus realist, our views on particular, substantive moral questions seem to be decided before we even arrive at those questions. You can probably bring to mind many of your acquaintances and accurately predict where they will stand on moral issues about which you've never conversed. That's because our views on the right thing to do are determined higher up or further back. Those views follow from the stances we have implicitly adopted on more abstract moral questions, such as, what sorts of beings are worthy of moral consideration, which, in turn, follow from answers to even more abstract questions, such as, what do we even mean by moral? Imagine a group of friends playing a board game. One of them rolls the dice, gets a 6, and goes to move their piece, but an argument breaks out over where it should now be. One person thinks it should move 6 places forward, another that it should move 20 places back. Like all the board games of my youth, this imaginary one descends into angry name-calling. But no one asks, what board game are we even playing? Had they done so, the group would have quickly realized that while one person thought they were playing Monopoly, another thought they were playing Chutes and Ladders. No one asked the question that pushed the argument further back, to where the real source of their disagreement lay. In the case of our moral disagreements, the same thing is happening. We're trying to have very specific arguments about whether such and such is morally bad without ever seeing if we agree on what morally bad means. We don't all agree on what the fundamental source of our kindness is, and that's a conversation we need to have. Practical consequences. It might be tempting to think that as long as someone behaves kindly, it doesn't really matter how they explain that kindness. I disagree. How we explain kindness has practical consequences. Different explanations suggest different limits to kindness and different routes to making people kinder. Just as vital, without a good explanation of the source of kindness, you've got no answer to give people who doubt it even exists. So, what are the explanations on offer? If you ask, why are people kind? That's right, I'm a hoot at parties. These are the responses you tend to get. People are kind because we've internalized rules, such as, don't take what doesn't belong to you, don't pull your sister's hair. We are kind because God made us kind. It's sometimes rational to be kind. When people are kind, they are simply behaving as rationality demands. Humans aren't kind. Sometimes the free market will direct selfishness toward mutually beneficial outcomes, but we're always selfish at root, and don't you forget it. Try it yourself, maybe. See if this list captures most of the answers you get. I believe these answers are incorrect. They're not the right account of why humans are kind. And being wrong about the very fundamentals of kindness is a big problem. Each answer paints a different picture of morality and its limits. For instance, people who believe that kindness exists only thanks to rules and the threat of punishment for breaking them are stuck with a dim view of humanity, in which kindness is born out of fear. They also can never expect kindness to go beyond that which the rules demand. Have you ever tried to get someone to be a bit kinder, only to have them respond with something like, "Why should I? I'm not breaking any rules"? It's an exasperating response, especially when used to defend real cruelty. But if rules explain kindness, it makes sense. The true explanation of human kindness is needed now perhaps more than ever. It's vital in unkind times that people believe in kindness, that we all have some confidence in the foundations of morality. We need to be able to point to the kindness source so that we can say, actually, kindness isn't optional. It isn't some side effect of market forces. It isn't a softness produced by the coddling of snowflake millennials. Kindness is built into the fabric of what it is to be human. And once we understand that, we'll realize just how much kinder we could and should be.